Welcome, everybody. Come on in, get cozy, get comfy. I expect a full house today. I think we will have a full house today. We got a whole lot to talk about in our space. I'm going to do the best I can to try to filter the flood of information that is out there. And I'm going to, again, try to distill it down to what's practical, what's actionable, and then I'm gonna just take a stab. I'm gonna get the crystal ball out and see if I can kind of predict some downstream impacts from some of these changes that kind of may or may not happen. And of course, I'm talking specifically about the Department of Education. But let's just give everybody a minute here to get cozy. Like I said, I expect a full house today. If I am new to you, I'm Matt Carpenter. I'm a founder at College Aid Pro here. Welcome. We're happy to have you. We do these counselor coffee talks every other Wednesday, and we do our best where one Wednesday we will have a kind of a guest, an expert on that's somewhere in our ecosystem to kind of break up uh, you guys just having to listen to me, a talking head, talk at you for a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever we do, and hopefully get some additional value, a different perspective. This week, you are stuck with me, and again, we try to kind of just stay on, talk about what's topical, and again, that's easy this week. Sometimes we gotta go deep into the treasure chest. That's not the case this week. Um, but as always, I want to answer your questions. We work really hard to try to get to as many questions as possible. Please put those in the Q&A. And it doesn't have to be anything related to what we're talking about. If you had a specific case study where a student walked in and said, "Hey, I didn't get enough money from Rice University. What's our next best step here?" It doesn't matter what it is. Please talk to us about it. I will chat. I'll spend a little bit of time before we break at the end. If you don't already partner with us, if we don't provide financial aid resources and our software to your school, I'll share a little bit about what that looks like before we jump. Um, and if you want to meet with us to learn more and think and hear how we can support your school, I know our director of high school partnerships is on the call, Anne Marie. And Anne Marie, you can put your link or that landing page in the chat if anybody wants to look at it now. And I know I see a ton of our partners on here already. Before we get in, and we're going to go on a little bit of an emotional roller coaster here today, I think, or at least that's what I've been doing. So I might bring you on for the ride. But before we get granular on that, I don't do this enough, and I'm almost I feel badly that I'm doing it at a time, I guess, when, in some ways we're almost obligated to do it. It's School Counselor Month, as hopefully you are all know and are being showered with gifts and accolades and praises in your respective high schools and households, etc., as you should be. And it's crazy because for some of you I've known for 20 years, which is wild. I know your partners, I know your kids, vice versa. Emma's 10 now, by the way, if you can believe that. My Emma's 10 now, and I've known a lot of you before I was even married. And we used to get to go out for drinks together after we did presentations and see each other, right? Obviously, specifically the Northeast, but even way back then, we used to go to some different spots. But I get to see you and touch you and tell you how much I appreciate you and what you do, I don't get to do that as much anymore. And for those of you who knew it, I don't get to do it at all. Um, and so it's really hard to, I think, come up with the appropriate words or whatever. But I really do have just this immense amount of gratitude and appreciation and for what you guys do. And I look at school counselors as one of the most impossible job descriptions there is. And I've had a unique vantage point because I've just got to be along with the journey with you. I talk to the parents, so I have their insight, which is usually unappreciative and sometimes nasty. And I know a lot of you're not you wish you could just focus on the college stuff or just be a college counselor, but that's kind of the funnest or most rewarding part of the job sometimes, of course. But you also have to deal with all the mental health and the relationships and all of it, all while I don't think any of you that I've known are getting massively wealthy from this. Um, and again, in so many cases, not really appreciated for what you do. Where I look at it like as mission critical as teachers and coaches and band instructors are to these high school kids' lives. You guys are the bridge to the rest of their life, whether that's college, which is obviously our sweet spot, or the military or vocational school, or just into the trades or whatever. You're the bridge. So I would argue one of the, if not the most important kind of piece that is touching them. And when we look at our job, which is to try to make college affordable and transparent and bring the level of stress down for parents and students, again, especially when it comes to the financial piece of this puzzle, you're our number one partners in the space. Like you are who we look to. You're the tip of the spear, right? As I say all the time, you've heard me say that a lot. We are together the tip of the spear here. So I share all that just to say that we do not take you guys for granted. We see you. We see what you do. We know how mission critical you are to the future of these kids' lives and what you're doing today. And again, and I just think don't get the appreciation you all have earned and deserved and whatever. So hopefully that resonates, right? Because I'm very genuine about that, and I speak for my whole team. And I always say the best way to get a compliment is if it's behind your back, right? We compliment you guys behind your backs all the time. So you don't hear that, but this is me kind of saying it for the team, going on record, and just saying we're incredibly grateful that for what you do. And again, I need to do a better job of articulating this when it's not just when I'm supposed to. It counts our appreciation more. So, anyways, hopefully that landed. So let's switch gears here. And this is to something that's a little less of the warm fuzzies, right? And again, I'm going to do my best to distill the information that's out there that's coming out incredibly quickly, and then kind of make some predictions to the best of my ability, given the information that we have today, knowing that this thing's going to be a moving target. I can also tell you that right now we're working really hard to just kind of put together a document that's probably going to be live, because we know we're going to need to update it all the time, but to give you guys some source of like, all right, there's all these things going on over here right now. What's true, what's not, what's rumor mill, and what does it mean? What's actionable? And then I'm going to leave you, which I always think is kind of the most important, of like, okay, things are happening that are outside of our control. In some ways, that's who cares? There's nothing we can do about that. So what now? What do we do about it, right? What's actionable? What can we control? It's something we coach all the time and try to practice and try to walk the walk here, right? Especially when we're talking, let's control the controllables. There's certain things that are out of control. Let's control the controllables. So I'll also try to leave us with, okay, this is what's happening and this is what might happen. What can we do to put ourselves and our families in the best position given this? Okay. And part of this, right, even though I just loved you guys up quite a bit here, is going to be a challenge on you, right? I think this is going to put more onus on school counselors, definitely on us, right? Definitely on us. But I'm inviting you to that challenge. I'm going to do my best here not to be an alarmist. I'm going to do my best not to be political. I'm going to do my best not to be cynical or too emotional, right? Panic is never the answer. Um, I said, you know what? I said, I'm actually going to do the homework. I'm going to actually read this bill. I'm going to read the whole bill, and then I'm going to try to, articulate it into layman's terms. I don't need to do that. I'm going to read the whole bill to you now. This is the entire bill. HR, this is Bill H.R. 899. You ready for this? The Department of Education shall terminate on 12/13/2026. End of bill. That's the entire bill. So say what you want about the guy, but he is hilarious, and he is entertaining. So, what does that mean? Again, this can be frustrating because it reminds me of some of these FAFSA changes that happened 2 years ago. We predicted the FAFSA was going to be a complete friggin' shit show, is even worse than we predicted. We predicted that so many families are going to pay more for college when they got rid of the sibling discount, when they implemented the business owner rule of having to report it even if you're under 100 employees. We predicted it when they changed the divorce separated split household rule. It all came to fruition, right? And it was all bad for consumers. Which gets us to say, who are the people in this room when these decisions are getting made and that clearly don't understand the trickle down effects? Okay. Now, getting rid of the Department of Education is not a new initiative, started under Jimmy Carter in 1979. Almost every Republican regime has made different attempts to dismantle it or reorg it. Reagan made the biggest push. So this is not a new initiative here. And let me be clear, it's not all bad at all. I hate how it's packaged. I think it just comes with a slant of cruelty and a lack of empathy. So I think if it was just packaged in a way that said, "Hey, we're not as efficient as we think we can be, and we almost want to take this privatize this bureaucratic system here and see if we can again get more efficient and maybe free up some resources in the process and trim some fat and all." Fine. Who's gonna push back on that? And I think that's a lot of the initiative, right? I think a lot of the initiative is trying to do that, just that. Now, let me skip to some of the biggest fears and hopefully alleviate those. And again, you know, I am not a decision maker here, so I'm trying to make my best predictions in some cases. But Pell Grants are not going to be impacted. Okay, the dollar amounts of at least the federal direct student loans are incredibly unlikely to be impacted. Okay, I'm going to pause there and come back. I think there's going to be some challenges in terms of distributions, but I think there's going to be, if they mess with any dollar amounts, it should be negligible, easy for me to say, right? Of course, when every dollar counts for families, but they're not going to abolish the federal grant program or the federal student loan program. I don't, again, I'm not making guarantees here, but I think hopefully what I'm trying to do is skip to the end and alleviate what might be some of the worst fears here. I will say, and this is just tends to be a theme, and it just, I don't know that I have a positive spin on this one, but as I'm learning in real time here and just trying to distill the information and figure out what the downstream impacts are going to be, my meta conclusion here is that the families that need the most help are going to be the ones that are suffering the most from this stuff, right? Which again tends to be a really disappointing common theme. But details to follow there. But that's kind of my common theme, which kind of brings me back to why the challenge becomes more important for us, right? And for you guys, to say, okay, what was already a hard thing is probably going to get a little bit harder here. Again, especially for those that have the hardest time already. So we got to get better, right? We got to get better because it's not going to happen from um, it's not going to happen from the government. It's not going to happen from the colleges, right? And so, maybe some step up in the private sector, like us, right? We're going to, right? I promise you that. And maybe some other bodies step up, but I don't see where the resources are going to be for those other bodies to happen in the public sector. So again, that's where the challenge kind of comes to you all is individuals. And I promise I'm going to make this actionable. And I know I'm being meta at the moment, but I'm talking you guys through this in real time, right? This is kind of what's happening in my brain now. So although the Pell Grants shouldn't be negatively impacted, the federal direct student loans shouldn't be negatively impacted, at least the dollar amounts. What is already happening, okay, is that, and you guys have seen this, is that a lot of these federal departments are shrinking because they're getting kind of these buyout options, right? We'll pay you, 8 months salary, I think is the deal, and some other things, and basically go try to find a job elsewhere. Here's your optional kind of buyout. If they don't get rid of the department, period, and just cut it, but they're offering these buyouts so folks can basically say, hey, I get a 8 months of a paycheck lump sum and then go see if I can get a job in the private sector. And a lot of individuals, hopefully, right, will be rooting for them, are going to get a win there. But we're already seeing, again, here's the trickle down effects. The loan servicers, those departments are already shrinking, right? And I think, again, those are some of the ones that are going to get actualized, and you're going to see a massive outflow. What does that mean? Okay. What that means is that we could see a delay on when money actually change hands in terms of student loans being dispersed in terms of forgiveness programs, right? Forgiveness programs getting evaluated, right? And the those individuals, um, their payments paused, or maybe they're waiting to get hopefully approved for forgiveness programs. Again, these are human beings that got to do a lot of this stuff. It's not all automated by any stretch, right? So we could see it take longer for money to change hands, which again was uh, that was a challenge last year with the FAFSAs getting delayed so bad, and so it that is a real impact that I think will happen relatively soon for a decent amount of families where the money's not coming in time. And how are these individual colleges going to react that way? Now, again, I think so long as the money comes, we're going to be okay, but it's going to be a lot of stress for individual households. And again, I think some knocks on your door, similar to the FAFSA not being operational last year, where you feel kind of really helpless, right? Like we do sometimes where, but and the messaging is going to be the money's coming, the money's going there, we gotta wait, right? We got to have these conversations with these individual colleges when it comes up. They're going to be in the know too. It's not going to be a surprise to them, but it's going to be scary, right, for families. The other thing another concern that I have that I think is very real is that the plus loans are what they're talking about is number one, if it's going to be a real pain for the plus loans to be serviced, that's going to be the first loan option at the federal government that they're to go or get capped or something like this. Now, the plus loan was 9% last year. It has an origination fee of 4%. So effectively, that's a 10% loan. So for a lot of families, that's a bad option. However, if you don't have a lot of credit, that might be your only option. Or sorry, if you don't have good credit, that might be your only option to borrow for your kid. They have the most robust forgiveness programs. They have the most flexible repayment terms, the plus loan. So for a lot of families, that is the best solution for any number of reasons. So the plus loan, it could go away soon. It could again, it could get capped. Now, you just heard me say there's some very negative features to that loan. So that in and of itself does not that doesn't freak me out too bad, right? Although I know for a lot of families those flexible repayment terms and wicked long repayment schedules are a real positive, right? And why for some families it will make sense. What I'm more worried about was that as we shrink, right, as this kind of body kind of governing body shrinks, we're going to see this massive influx of the private sector. Some good, some bad with that. What makes me nervous is in the loan space, okay? Because the plus loan is kind of the first place that, given that it's a federal government program, that they keep the rest of the market in check. So even though the plus loan was so high last year, the private sector kind of has to look at that and go, okay, they're 9%. We can't go like too much above that to remain competitive, right? We got to be a competitive option for, a percentage of the population. If that goes away, um, now we just have the private sector as options to get loans, right? Along with the state programs, but even the state programs, if you go a couple layers down, it's the private sector. Massachusetts, right? Everybody talks about we use MIFA, they're a nonprofit organization. They're owned by Fidelity, okay? Or New Jersey, we only use HISA, we only use HESA. They're owned by Franklin Templeton, right? And every state that has a nonprofit organization, if you go a couple layers down, it's a private, huge bank whose business model is to sell loans through a nonprofit. They don't pay taxes, blah, blah, blah. So even though there'll be some state options in there, we don't have to look too far to know that they are ultimately run by the private sector. I share all that to say that I'm very nervous that if we don't have a plus loan, keeping kind of everyone in check, so to speak, here. Now the private sector looks at each other and says, "Hey, these people are going to have to borrow money for college. Maybe we start the floor at 15% or whatever." it's good for business for them, is my expectations. That's one concern I have that is real. And again, guys, I'm gonna have actionable. It's not gonna be all doom and gloom here. There's plenty of things that we can still control, but that's a concern of mine, that I think is very real. And even though the plus loan is not a good solution for a lot of families, I think it keeps the market as a whole relatively right, still freaking 9% in check. So another thing I'm concerned about in terms of our this the accountability shrinking, right, with the Department of Education shrinking. Now, right now, if you want to qualify for federal money as a college, which every single one of them does, because you can't be a it's not a sustainable business model for a college if you don't have federal funding, right? That means you couldn't get plus loans, you couldn't get Pell Grants, you couldn't get federal direct student loans, right? So it's a massive, a mission critical part of every college's budget. Now, you have to check certain boxes in order to be eligible for federal funding, and there's already a massively whittled down kind of watchdog, right? That the federal government has to make sure that, like, okay, if this college is going to be eligible, are they checking the appropriate boxes to get this funding, right? To provide. So you have to meet certain credentials, and there's a lot of them, right? And we're going to get smarter here, right? We're going to get smarter here. But I know, and I have some experience with, if you want to get federal funding, one of the things that you need to do is there's some minimum things that you have to be able to provide students with disabilities. And I'm not just talking about those with physical disabilities. I'm talking about the huge spectrum and range of learning disabilities, right? Whether it's you know, ADD, dyslexia, right? Asperger's, whatever it happens to be, right? And there's this very kind of loose grading system that the federal government has for every college. And to simplify, it's like you have three buckets here, right? And you have to get at least a one. And like a one for a college is like, we allow extra uh, test time, right? We make sure that there is some tutors that students can go seek out, but it's this bare minimum, and it's very much a bare minimum, right? So usually if kids do really need additional resources like that, you just can't go to those colleges, which is most of them. Whereas the other end of the spectrum, threes, right? A level three is like a Curry College here in the Boston area, just south of Boston, is they have their own building, right, that's dedicated to these resources. You know, you have almost like one-on-one help for students that need it, in addition to all your that's incredibly hands-on for these students. So, and then of course the twos are somewhere in the middle, right? We don't have necessarily a dedicated building and this huge staffed up kind of infrastructure. But we're more than the bare minimum, which a ton of colleges are. So I'm worried about what's going to happen to kind of that oversight there, right? Because that costs colleges more money in all those cases, but the trade-off is, part of it is just because they want to do right, of course, but from the good of their hearts, they want to do right by these students that need more resources, and part of it, of course, is just like, we have to do it if we want federal funding. So now we have to kind of quote unquote trust that these individual colleges are going to do the you know take it on the chin financially, even when they don't have to, and that's asking a lot, right? That's asking a lot. So those are kind of some of my big concerns. Now look, if the Department of to make sure that I'm not being an alarmist here, the Department of Education is not going to disappear. It might be repurposed, right? The leader in the clubhouse is that it's going to be kind of assumed by the Department of Treasury. So they'll chop it up maybe in a couple different places, but the bulk of what's relevant in terms of, making college accessible and affordable for more families in our country, that would go under the Department of Education umbrella. This has to get approved by Congress, right? So there's a lot of layers here, and who knows, guys? This could all be noise. Now, again, I know it's not all noise because some things are already happening. There's already some folks that are servicing loans that have taken that deal, so to speak. And I think that'll um continue to happen, and there will be downstream impacts with that. But again, I think and it's the first 100 days of our presidency, so anybody's going to go out there and say, "Here's all of our initiatives." And of course, this has been the loudest first couple of weeks, at least in my lifetime, from a new president. So you'd have to think that not every single one of these initiatives are going to be seen through to the end. So it could be that most of this that we're talking about here is much ado about nothing, and it was one of the 20 initiatives that said, here's what's going to happen. And this one, goes on the back burner. That could happen. But I don't, I don't think that's going to happen, right? That's one extreme. I also don't think, again, Pell Grants are going to go away and everything. And it's a complete disaster, again, especially for folks that need the most help. They're going to be impacted the most, make no mistake about it. They will definitely continue to be impacted the most. But, I don't see this seismic shift in our space, right? In our ecosystem here. So that's kind of my diatribe. That's my soapbox. So what are we doing? Like, what are we doing right now to say, okay, how can we get better? What do we need to do with these unknowns, right? If we have the wherewithal to see that if it's not this year, at least probably next year, some of the impacts here is that it's going to be harder to get money. It's going to get more expensive. Loan rates are going to go up. So what can we do about that? We have to coach it harder. We have to coach it better. We have to make it more transparent for our families. And even though this is a space I think most of you just completely stay away from, and for good reason, right? You're not going to ask families for their tax returns and how much they have saved for college and all this. Totally get it. But everybody at least can be telling their families that they have a resource, a free resource to tell them exactly what they are signing up for. So even if you are not having these conversations with the kids, with the parents, you can at least go tell them before you commit to a college, guys, look very, very close in terms of what we're signing up for, especially since now what we end up borrowing is going to be presumably a lot more expensive than it looks today. Okay. So how do we do that, right? I know a lot of you already are using the platform, which is great. If you're not already, I think it's more important than ever that you do. Look, I totally get that's a self-serving recommendation. I just don't know of a better resource that exists out there. Okay. And this is where families, they onboard themselves. So even if you're not in this conversation, I'll say, guys, onboard yourselves. Okay. You're going to find out exactly what Boston College costs before you even apply there. Okay. And then you're going to be able to say, here's our budget. And we give them kind of a 1 minute exercise so they can understand their budget. Right. And then here is the difference that somebody's going to have to borrow. Okay. But we don't want to just look at this gross number. And again, we're going to get better here, guys. I promise we're going to get more precise. After this webinar, I have a meeting with, decision makers where this tool is going to be smarter very quickly here, because we're going to emphasize this, because we're looking at the mirror going, okay, what can we do, right? How can we kind of protect people here? So, okay, that's great. I'm going to have to borrow 106,000 to go to Boston College. That's good. That's ideal. This is good. Okay, UC Santa Barbara, caution. Why? Well, we don't want to look at just the total amount that we're going to have to borrow, but what's the total amount we're going to have to pay back if we borrow this much? And again, it's going to get worse, unfortunately, here before it gets better. And what's that mean for a monthly payment? So this is what parents and families need to be staring at before they commit to a college, right? It's not just this 1 year deal. It's not just we're borrowing this amount of money. No, what are you borrowing down the line, right? And again, we will help people make this decision in a more intuitive way and a more granular in terms of what they're signing up for. But I see it as, again, certainly our responsibility. And I promise you, I'm going to be coaching my ass off for the rest of this year and always, right, to help families make good decisions here. But I think, and again, forgive me if I'm, stepping out of line here. Your responsibility as school counselors is usually just help these kids figure out where they're going to thrive, where they're going to get in, what's a good fit. And you do that stuff in your sleep. And it's never really been a part of your job description to say, oh, how does all of that fit into the affordability factor? But I think for some kids that can just be a disservice. And and again, it's not your job to go solve it and go have these conversations at the kitchen table with these families. But I implore you to at least help them understand that they have resources that help them see into the future. Get that crystal ball and just make sure that are we okay with this outcome? Right? And so please, I think that's something that we can do now, and something we say every time. Well, I'm never going to tell a kid where to apply, where not to apply, where to go, where not to go. It's my job to help you know exactly what you were signing up for and have a good understanding of what that outcome is likely going to be. And of course, we know there's a million variables, right? And things change and majors change and schools change and all that. But with the information we have, let's make sure that we feel pretty good about the decision that we're making. And here's the other thing that you guys should be doing right now, encouraging your families to do. They can upload their financial aid award offers here. So again, for those of you that are new to us, we hooked up with a part of the Gates Foundation for this part of the technology. They'll take a picture of their award letter. We looked at 4,000 high schools, 4,000 colleges last year. There was 914 different ways that award letters were presented. They just upload their award letters here. So I say, okay, I got accepted in the Northwestern, right? I can just go, no, maybe I should have picked a different school. I just upload my award letter here. The first thing that we will do is that we will translate it. Okay. And then once we do, and it'll put it in this really nice, like side by side comparison. And how we do it is first we say, let's look at what this is going to cost before we look at loans, before we look at work study. Then we'll drill down and look line by line in terms of our need-based financial aid versus merit-based scholarships, right? And just cut out all the noise, but more importantly, put all the awards into one uniform way so that they compare apples to apples. But I think the coolest part about our platform will tell you, did you get a good deal? Are you like Northeastern? Or sorry, are you like Boston College that usually, I can put Northeastern in this bucket now, that usually under awards families about $10,000 on average, unbeknownst to them, right? Let us play watchdog and say, did Boston College give you what they said a family that meets your profile should get? What's your likelihood of being able to appeal successfully? And what would be a normal ask, right, to go back to get money? So take advantage of this, right? This is free for everybody. And again, where the government is going to play less a watchdog and hold some of these colleges accountable, we're going to get better. I promise. It's already something we take pride in. We're going to get better. So those are the things that we can be doing, is making sure that, okay, we don't know how much these rates are going to go up, but this gives us a good idea of what the odds are likely going to be. And I promise you, I promise you, we're going to be all over these changes every single day, educating you all, educating our audience. It's going to be especially important, I think, coming up for the class 2025 as we get into, like, for those that do have to borrow, that's a big time moving target. Where should we be? What are going to be the best options for those folks? And I think this year will be impacted less than the class 2026 and moving forward. But continue to pay attention, because again, we're all over this. We are saying, okay, we already had this pretty hard job, which our job is to end the student debt crisis, right? That's our pretty clear mission. It got a little bit harder, but that's okay. We'll just get better. Um, and Anne Marie, if you could, I meant to grab this earlier, but if you can just put in the general chat, or yeah, if you can just put in the general chat, like our landing page, so I can kind of quickly walk folks through how we can help them. And then you can also share your calendar, email, or whatever you want to do for families that want to learn more about how we can support their high school if we don't partner already. But let me answer. I got a question here, and I want to make sure I get to it. And I'm sorry, Samantha. Thank you for your patience. Okay, student applied ED to Columbia. He had his father on the CSS profile. He not a court order, restraining order, no contact. Father. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So look at first of all, I will tell you, you can bring us into this appeal if it makes sense. So the long and the short of it is, guys, is that a student thought that he needed to include a parent on the CSS profile where there was a court-ordered restraining order. It sounds like kind of a nasty situation. So the student and or his other biological parent included that parent on there, when in fact they should have gone, as I'm sure you're all knowing now, you should have gone through the non-custodial waiver process with Columbia beforehand, but that doesn't matter. It's come and gone. But I would fight this tooth and nail. And I would explain, we didn't know, it was our understanding we had to include his information. We didn't know about the non-custodial. Had we have, we would have gone that route. Um, and I'm being genuine in that, like, feel free to bring us into this appeal if you want. We've been incredibly successful with appeals this year, more than ever, especially specifically with EDs, early decision families, because we've kind of seen a general theme of early decision applicants getting squeezed more than we ever have in previous years in terms of the aid that they've been offered. So you're doing the right thing, right? You're appealing, and you want to say that again, there's obviously they're going to use that documentation to say that this is a court-ordered restraining order. It could be he's not going to be contributing anything, and it could be a danger to bring him into this conversation. They could put themselves in physical danger by bringing him into this conversation. I would use some language like that. It sounds like I'm not being embellishing much there. If I am, oh well, because it's that type of language that makes them almost impossible not to remove that information. But again, feel free to email us on the side if you want, and bring us into that conversation if necessary. Okay. Big question is, what do you think is the best time to negotiate appeal for more merit aid? Do we wait until we hear back from all the schools, or start this process now while financial aid personnel are not overwhelmed by regular admissions too? Okay, our top two. So this is really when this is a moving target, right? We get this question all the time, especially where it's appeal season. When should we appeal? And guess what we always have to say, which seems like a very, I guess it's fitting today, politician answer. It depends. It depends on the school. It depends on the situation, right? If we don't have any real leg to stand on in the appeal, we haven't had a job loss. They didn't overvalue our business. They didn't overvalue our home equity. We don't have some like clear ammunition. Then oftentimes we'll wait until we get a more competitive offer, or see if that comes from a competing school, right? And that will be our biggest negotiating chip when we go back to that school to appeal for more. Other times, if we have something, some substance in our appeal, we'll go back immediately. There's nothing to wait for. Or again, obviously it's an ED. There's nothing to wait for. If this family's not going to be eligible for need and it's just a merit-based appeal and it's Northeastern and American, again, I'd want to see who gave more. Do we have a top choice there? But if we know we're not getting need, then there's no really need to wait for other offers and for need-based aid. But what I would say is just, and again, for those of you that follow along, know this, it's got to be the student that leads any merit-based appeal. They do not want to hear from mom and or dad. Okay. They want to hear from the student. It's going to hurt your appeal chances if the parent is the loudest voice in the room. That's got to be coming directly from the student, even if it's the parent that's, maybe leading the charge behind the keyboard. Okay, so I want to again kind of give you another visual here, and Anne-Marie put this in the chat, but this is just a little bit about, again, how we partner with schools. We do and Anne-Marie, if you want to share a link here, you can. I forgot, as I always do, what my marching orders were in terms of if I share the curriculum or not, but we do a real-time once a month, every Tuesday at 7 Eastern time and 9 Pacific time, curriculum for what families should be doing in real time, right? So obviously right now for the class 2025, we're talking about appealing for more money in private scholarships, okay? For underclassmen, and by the way, when a parent signs up, they're automatically placed into the right curriculum. For the underclassmen, we're talking about, okay, you're just getting started, kind of financial aid 101 type of deal. Okay. Um, every other Monday. So we have the second Tuesday of the month where we do that curriculum in real time through their entire high school journey. Every other Monday we have live office hours. So our experts are just at the ready, right? So parents show up with their questions and we give just specific advice. They can be anonymous. And we try to have a ton of experts on there. So a couple of them are going through some questions live, and some others are just banging away at the keyboard, doing as many as we can, right? And then so again, they can have access to our software. If you guys want access to the software, you can as well. But again, at a minimum, just make sure you continue to pay attention with us, sign up for the coffee talks, but let us provide all the financial aid resources that we can for you guys, for your families, especially now that I think there's going to be less options, certainly at the federal level. We'll see if that trickles down to the state. Um, okay, can they sign up here? Okay, yeah, that's where they sign up right through here. Um, yeah, and book some time in, Marie. If you haven't shared your calendar link, go ahead and do that. Uh, there you go. There you go. Looks like you did. Or they can email you. Okay, do you have plans to make a counselor account platform for my cabin? It would be helpful to be able to sit down with our families. That's all built. Yeah. So we do have a counselor account now. So the big distinction there is that most of the high schools that we work with, we provide everything for free. There is a percentage that buy premium MyCap seats for all of their families, and as a part of what comes with that, you get a counselor dashboard, admin panel, whatever. Um, so that's something that, again, I don't know. I know most schools don't have budgets. Those they start as low as $2,000 a year. So we're, I think, pretty affordable, but we have some hard costs, development costs to build your kind of own environment. But that exact same thing happens where you have a counselor dashboard. You can log into any school accounts or any family's accounts. Only thing you don't see is their personal financial information, but you have access to everything else. And yeah, you can have those conversations one on one. So yeah, that is built, I'm happy to say. Okay. Yeah, so look, great question. Okay. Now, some of you guys might have seen this presentation. We're going to do more. In general, I know a lot of you know that net price calculators are so unreliable, and so many school counselors are so frustrated because they know the colleges are saying, and you guys are saying, go use the school's net price calculators, and they stink. They're wildly misleading. There's not one college in the country that has a net price calculator for divorced or separated families. Ours does. If you're divorced or separated, that's all accounted for in here. Even if it's an institutional school like Vanderbilt or U Chicago or RPI that only looks at one household, even though they use the institutional methodology. Because the problem is if you use the school's net price calculator and each household does it and you add them together, that's not how the algorithm actually works in terms of how schools project. That may give you, depending on the college, a directionally accurate projection. But again, we're also now relying on the colleges. And by the way, not one college has their own net price calculator. They're all outsourced to a third party, not one. They hate their net price calculator. So that's not to say they're all inaccurate. Some of them are pretty good, but usually the ones that are pretty good, really good even, it's like completing the CSS profile, right? They take about half hour on average, where we're psyched because it takes our families about 5 minutes. If you're savvy, 2 minutes to onboard yourself, and then you have a really accurate projection. And it doesn't matter if you're divorced, separated, whatever. Yeah, okay, and I got that question in terms of yeah, we already have the counselor profile in there. Um, yeah, February 11th. No, I think it's 2 weeks. Oh yeah, February 11th is the next night where we're having our curriculum, right? So for your families, make sure that you share those or sign up and get with Anne Marie. For seniors, understanding award letters, appealing, private scholarships, myths versus reality. Basically, private scholarships are nonsense. You guys know that. And then for underclassmen, how do we build a list with affordability in mind? That's what we're talking about. Some version of the financial aid 101 type deal. Okay. Yeah, for those of you, I know it looks like we're kind of like wrapping up here again. If you didn't hear me in the beginning, just incredibly grateful for all that you do. We're consider ourselves teammates, right? We're kind of fighting the good fight out here, trying to make this happen for families and for students and especially for families that have the hardest challenge here, right? With the least amount of resources. And again, I think it's gonna get harder before it's gonna get easier. So we gotta uh, we have to we got to level up here. And yeah, what you and this, if you want I saw somebody ask about, can I get on your list for counselor coffee talk? I will bring that up again. Give me just 1 second. But if you go on to this link that is in the chat and AM, if you can just share it again here, um, you can right on here just register now for coffee talk, and there you go. You'll be in business. Okay. Okay, I'll going once, going twice here, but any more questions again with as it pertains to, excuse me, to any of this stuff, please let me know. Hopefully I was not an alarmist today. That was not my intention by any stretch, but I also don't want to be naive. I'm trying to thread the needle there. And again, doing my best to uh, these are recorded, so luckily for you all, I'm gonna have to be accountable with these predictions, and we're gonna be right or wrong here. And let's see, AM, where are we next? We were just at South Carolina School Counselor Conference. We were at SACAC in Atlanta in a couple of in a couple of weeks. If you guys are going to be there, come see us. Masca in Massachusetts. We will be there, and I think the very beginning of April. I will not, but my buddy Anne Marie will be there. Um, but yeah, we're out there, guys. So make sure you come shake our hands and then we'll always be at NACAC. I know that's in Columbus. We're ways off there in September, and ASCA is in Long Beach. We'll be there. Um, Yeah, yeah, that's a good call, Anne Marie. If we should be anywhere in your neck of the woods, school counselor conferences or whatever, and you think it'd be valuable, there you go. WACAC's in Vegas this year, right? Vegas, baby. Let our hair down a little bit. Okay, everybody. Yeah, it's always fun to meet you guys in person. We throw a good party too. We had a good party out in LA last year. Another one that's gonna be awesome this year, guys, is so this year our yeah, Cappy Hour. We call it Cappy Hour. We had a great party in LA, and we'll be doing one definitely at NEACAC. So the New England one is my home city in Beverly this year. Endicott College, if you guys haven't been there, it's friggin' stunning. And we're gonna do a Cappy Hour at my local establishment, which is the Anchor. There's real pirates there, real pirates. If you want a piece of taste of New England culture, you got to go to the Anchor at least once in your life, and that's where we're going to host our party at NEACAC, and that's, I think it's in and around Memorial Day. I forget, but anyways, tell us where we should be if none of those locations were near you guys. All right, thanks everybody, and again, I mean it incredibly sincerely. We're super grateful for you, and thanks for tuning in.